Dear friends, my name is Naushi Nizami and I'm here with you to discuss more about the monetary stimulus package announced by RBI on 17th April 2020. So in this second series we are going to discuss about other policy instruments that have been announced recently by RBI and we'll try to understand them in depth. So first let us recollect what is the need for stimulus and why such packages are being announced from time to time by the policymakers in India. So as we all know that India is currently in the 40-day long lockdown period which has halted production across several sectors. Moreover, not just India, there are other economies developed as well as developing which are also under lockdown, and together the global lockdown is affecting foreign trade. So it is lowering the exports and it is in many countries it is increasing the imports. So that's how foreign trade is getting affected negatively. Also, there is uncertainty about business sentiments as there is lack of clarity on when the entire situation would improve and the economy would be functional back to normalcy. So, until all these questions are answered, uncertainty remains that how lockdown process would be culminated and in a phased manner all the sectors would start working and functioning. Moreover, because of this uncertainty, the transactionary and precautionary demand for money is increasing. So, transactionary demand for money is the case where money is demanded by households and individuals for carrying out day-to-day transactions. So, as you know that currently the demand for essentials has gone up. Households are mostly spending their money for transaction purposes, for carrying on day-to-day transactions and for meeting their daily needs. So their transactionary demand is increasing. Moreover, even the precautionary demand for money is increasing. So precautionary demand for money is the case where money is the demand for money increases for meeting unforeseen circumstances, and as I said there is uncertainty about the entire process of how the economy would resume normalcy, and there are also threats to job cuts, and there are also threats to new jobs being created in the economy in the short term. So the precautionary demand for money is also rising. There are also supply lags, which are mostly because of disruptive road transport. And disruptive road transport is on account of lockdown and on account of state regulations. So, as part of the drive of sealing the containment zones, in a number of areas across India, road transport is currently not being allowed, and so the supply chain of transporting goods is getting affected directly. So this is leading to supply lags, and these supply lags are overall dipping up the sales in the market. Moreover, Indian GDP has been registering slow growth even before the COVID 19 crisis. So, right from the first quarter of 2019-20 financial year till the last quarter, where the results are still awaited, our economy has not grown above 5%, which has been much lower than the expected projections of 7 to 7.5%. And because Indian economy was already in slowdown, now this concern coupled with lockdown and COVID-19 crisis has increased uncertainty, and so there is a need for the active role of government and central banks to brave against this crisis. Moreover, the recent reports released in end of 2019 have revealed that unemployment was very high, approximately 6% at the end of 2019. And now, because of lockdown, there are also estimates that there would be job cuts and new jobs will not be created at the same pace as it was expected. So, because of this reason, again, there is a need for stimulus, both from fiscal and monetary sectors. Inflation also has been quite high till January 2020, and it was higher than 6 to 7% in December 2019. Although the primary reason was fluctuation in food prices, but still, because inflation also has been high, efforts have been to control inflation through direct and indirect measures. So overall, looking at the current state of economy, there is a strong need for a stimulus package in India. Now let us understand some other stimuli which has been announced by RBI on 17th April. So as per the RBI governor, overall the liquidity injection that has been given to the Indian economy is measuring 3.2% of GDP. So this much liquidity has been released already in the economy, and mostly these changes have come through the net absorptions under liquidity adjustment facility, which is amounting to 4.36 lakh crores. So liquidity adjustment facility basically measures the impact of changes in repo and reverse repo rate, and as we all know that reverse repo rate has been reduced further by 25 basis points. So currently reverse repo rate stands at 3.75% and repo rate stands at 4.4%, and this increased difference between reverse repo and repo rate is expected to release more liquidity in the system, as commercial banks will not have the same incentive to park their surplus funds with RBI. Rather, they can keep it in liquid form or invest them in call money market or other attractive avenues where the income is also high. Now, apart from these, another package which has been announced by RBI is provision of refinancing facilities to prominent banks. We can call them as prominent development banks like NABARD, SIDBI, regional rural banks, microfinancial institutions. So refinancing facilities basically implies additional finance, providing additional finance to such institutions at mostly lower rates of interest. So against the normal financing facilities, now these institutions can also take or withdraw more loans or more finance from RBI. This is also expected to release liquidity in these institutions, as these are mostly playing a very vital role in the development sector. Moreover, liquidity coverage ratio has been reduced from 100% to 80%. Now, what is liquidity coverage ratio? So, liquidity coverage ratio basically is measured by taking a ratio of the proportion of high quality liquid assets to total net cash outflows. So, if I have to explain this in very simple words, it implies that first of all, a bank has to make an estimate of how much would be the total cash outflows on a weekly basis and on a monthly basis. Now, what are cash outflows? They are basically the liabilities which bank keep in the form of deposits of households or institutions, and the rate at which these may be withdrawn. So on a normal functioning week or normally functioning month, there are regular withdrawals of such deposits kept by the households or institutions with the bank. So that normal percentage is basically the cash outflows estimated by the bank, and against it all banks are required to keep a proportion of high quality liquid assets. Now, high quality liquid assets are basically such liquid assets which are convertible quickly into liquid money. So, these can be something like government securities or bonds, or they can be what you know as treasury bills, or they can be other similar securities or foreign currency which can be quickly transferred into liquid form. Now, as of now, before this announcement, the liquidity coverage ratio was 100%, which means that if, for example, the total net cash outflows estimated by the bank are say 75 crores, that means on a monthly basis, they expect that 75 crore would be withdrawn by depositors from the banking system, then an exactly equivalent amount of high quality liquid assets, which can be in the form of treasury bills or other government bonds, have to be maintained by all banks. So if the total net cash outflows are 75 crore, then even banks are supposed to maintain 75 crore worth of high liquid assets. If this ratio is being reduced from 100% to 80%, it implies that now banks are no longer expected to keep the same amount of liquidity as they have calculated or estimated for cash outflow, and they can reduce it from 100% to 80%. So this is expected to bring and maintain more liquidity in the banking system, because now banks do not have to maintain as much amount of cash outflows as they have projected. So this is a move which is going to strongly benefit the banking sector. Apart from that, asset reclassification has also been done, and this move is pertaining to non-performing assets, what is commonly known as NPAs. So as per the previous announcement by RBI, where the moratorium period for borrowers have been extended for 90 days, now even asset reclassification has been suggested for the banks by the RBI. So basically what it implies in simple words is that in general, banks have to take action. They have to take action against borrowers who have been defaulting for some time period. So if someone has defaulted for has not paid back loan, say for 210 days, then the banks are supposed to classify that loan as non-performing asset. Now as per this recent announcement of RBI, all banks have to exclude this 90-day moratorium period from their calculation of non-performing assets. So if there are people who have defaulted on loan, or you can say who have not given the EMIs for the loan in this 90-day period, then you cannot classify the period, including that period and that loan, as NPAs. Rather, you have to exclude this 90-day moratorium period and then count and classify them as NPAs. So again, this gives a relaxing move to banks, because otherwise their NPAs would have exceeded a lot. Another announcement by RBI is that distribution of dividend may be postponed by banks. So generally, all the banks, they also earn profits, and their quarterly profits are released in the public domain from time to time. So if there are certain banks who have earned profits in the previous quarter, and they were expected to share the dividends, that means the benefits from those profits to their shareholders, then this sharing of dividend may be postponed with immediate effect from the time of 17th April RBI announcement. And this move also basically hints that RBI is creating additional rooms for liquidity to remain inside the banking system and not move out. Another announcement by RBI is the extension of resolution timeline. And extension of resolution timeline has been announced for a number of non-banking financial companies, which may be systematically important or not systematically important. So primarily non-banking financial companies, their main function is not to accept deposits rather than give loans or give additional finance facilities to institutions. But in some cases, there are some NBFCs who are legally and permitted by RBI to accept deposits. Now, extension of resolution timeline basically implies in simple words that they do not have to they are not expected to maintain liquidity in surplus amount for such a long period because of the lockdown. So the period of resolution has been extended to 90 days, and that means that excluding these 90 days banks have been granted more time. So basically, all such non-banking financial companies who are having non-performing assets, who are already having NPAs in their system, they are expected to keep aside additional money, which is known as additional provision of around 20% aside, because they are having NPA in their system. And if this resolution timeline has been extended to 90 days, it implies that these institutions have 90 more days. They have been given 90 more days to keep aside their additional provisions of up to 20% aside. So this gives a direct breather to NBFCs who are systematically important and not systematically important. And the distinction between SI and not SI is mainly done on the basis of net worth. So systematically important NBFCs are generally very high net worth NBFCs, so they have more deposits compared to non-systematically important NBFCs. So overall, basically these are the other announcements which have been shared by RBI and which are expected to boost economy from the post-lockdown effects. I hope you could understand these points, and I hope you can analyze what is the role of our central bank in stimulating our economy once we all successfully come out of lockdown. So, all of you take care of yourself till that time, and let's pray for the best. Thank you, everyone.